Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Maria Legier, forced by powers far beyond my control to mansplain to you that I am very happy to announce the release of my book, Howling at the Slutwalk Moon, Contrarian Ramblings in the Age of Conformity, available for Amazon Kindle as well as a paperback, both with or without illustrations. I will be taking some time off next week, so there will be no updates for the blog and no new videos that week. Please see links below and consider buying the bastard should you wish to support the blog and the channel. And now, without further ado, this is On Violent Censorship and Quaint Duets, a postmodern tragedy in 4 parts. To be frank and perfectly honest, I really can't stay. The censorious bull-dickery has been nibbling at the base of my skull far too much lately. It's been far too much for quite some time, but who cares about that, right? There is quite a lot of wonderment and very little worry in someone having their opinions and speech censored. It is a price I am willing to pay, as long as the filthy fascists get their comeuppance. Preferably with a bike lock through the skull whilst being subjected to the discipline of the acidic milkshake shower. Just as long as you don't deem my speech and conduct to be hateful. It's all quite alright, you marvellous miracle worker of do-goody nonsense you fantastic YouTube and mass-engulfing media you. All these calls for censorship, so astonishingly weird and confusing. It wouldn't be that bad were it just calls for censorship. We've had to deal with assholes of that nature for as long as we have held different opinions and have had culture that have pushed some boundary or other. Eek! Won't somebody please think of the children? And so forth, and so on. For something to offend someone's delicate sensibilities to be censored and stowed away is far more important than the freedom of other people to enjoy something that offends some hysterical screeching cat lady, with all the sense and magical reasoning of a batshit insane speck of dust. I don't think the calls for censorship is the issue. The implementation of censorship, on the other hand, most definitely is. That someone wielding some kind of power is stupid enough, or brainwashed enough, or pussy-whipped enough, or frightened of the mob enough to stoop to censoring opinions, speech, or culture because someone is offended is frightening. Or, as is more likely, because someone pretends to be offended just to get their fix of dopamine, righteous indignation, and egotistical power trip of the day. It is even more frightening that it is opinions going against the grain and holy dogma of society as it stands today that is getting censored and deemed verboten. Freedom of expression and speech is there to protect the rights of those who do not conform to whatever social standards we are handed, given or forced into to express their opinions, however contrarian they may be. When given the illusion that everyone holds the same opinion within a society, the immediate thought is of course that people are forced to hold the same opinion for fear of punishment if they do not. Sterile, whitewashed walls, padded cells, no room for worry here. We are all the same, of one mind, one body, engulfed by the fever and sermon, the cult of the great leader, all because someone is offended. And then it depends on who is offended. Because offence is a-okay, as long as the offence given is trudging along with the dominance of the party line. This censorship of speech and opinion is tyranny disguised as protection, the powers that be deciding that the poor huddled masses are just too frail and stupid to handle dissenting opinions and edgy teen humour from mouldy basements. That they are too weak of mind and of will to comprehend that someone can enjoy art and culture which they themselves do not enjoy. Oh baby, it's cold outside. It is getting very cold inside as well. Now it's all just days spent waiting for the cops or the Stasi or the Gestapo or the KGB or whatever to knock my door down for daring to not only consume the wrong kind of media, humour, art, culture, opinion and entertainment, but also for producing it. Once, I laughed at a joke about Islam, and I'm now terrified for my life. I did the same about Catholicism once or twice or thrice, but that doesn't worry me as much for some strange reason. Imagine that. I've got to get away, but getting away is easier said than done. I'm absolutely certain they are hiding in the bushes and in the poppies outside, waiting for the moment I escape from this fortified compound I call my apartment to shoot me down like a dog. No offense meant to dog lovers. I am one. A dog lover, that is, not a dog, though I wish I were. But that is besides the point. All this frenzied censorship and culling of the non-politically correct, of anyone labelled extremely right-wing for being slightly to the right, of an amalgamation of Mao, Lenin, Marx, Pol Pot and sacred Dworkin, no matter what they themselves have to say on the matter, has got me reduced to a babbling mass of paranoid nerves and tendons, swishing the air and screaming incoherently about the technocratic elite being out to get me. And the feminists, of course. Oh baby, it's cold outside. We are witnessing the ruination of liberal values which our societies have held dear and fought for and paid for even more dearly over the course of centuries. And it is bothering me something awful, as well as fucking should. Anyone not bothered, to some extent or other, by this must have had their head up their arse and their eyes firmly fixed on their navel, from within their digestive system. This evening has been... it's been dreadful. See, I can write about it in an over-the-top, obnoxious and paranoid manner, channeling all the Hunter Thompson the world could ever want or need. At the end of the day, however, it is the grim and realistic spectre of George Orwell that is floating in front of my vision. A peculiar ghost, visions and warnings of tyranny's past, present and future with an elegant moustache, whispering in a kind of half-mocking, half-disappointed voice. I warned you, didn't I? I warned you several times, yet you did not listen. And it is grim, and it is serious, and we make a toast with Italian red wine, before I tell him, I've been hoping that you'd drop in. So very nice. I've been looking for someone to talk to for a long time about this, but no one is willing to listen to me, George. They call me mad, George. Mad! Then they insist that if I have nothing to hide, I have nothing to fear, or to lose. And I'm just sitting here, wondering who in all the glory of Stalin's moustache decides what is needed to be hidden and what is not. And are they really that vain and selfish and egotistical that they don't realize that they are not safe from the tyranny of censorship which they wish to impose upon others? And the ghost of George Orwell will laugh sardonically and repeat what he said, albeit slightly more soothing. Then he will say that he is very happy to be dead, thank you very much. And we mucked it up ourselves, despite his warnings. So we'll damned well have to fix it for ourselves. And then it tells me, I'll hold your hands, they're just like ice. Before telling me to stay out of Burma, invest in gold, don't take any gruff from these swine, and so forth and so on. Before fading into dust, leaving me stranded in my living room, feeling maybe slightly more uppity, and a hell of a lot more paranoid than before his ghost graced me with its presence. You know, I recall, years ago in my early teens, when I first started getting into extreme metal, a poorly defined subgenre of music I still very much enjoy, buying all kinds of early Scandinavian black metal records, as well as a mixed bag of aggressive death and gloomy doom metal, all manners of filth and fury, thinking that soon my mother will start to worry. As is the natural order of things, a sort of kind of rebellion against the values of the parental generation through shock and horror that was lacking in anything even resembling subtlety. This was back in the heydays of Marilyn Manson, and at the tail end of the satanic panic. Man oh man, remember when Marilyn Manson was threatening? What a time to be alive. Now it's all ballads and cute and quaint duets from way back in the early 20th century we are supposed to find threatening and consider worthy of censorship, in a weird, backwards role reversal of parent-child relationship, with all the snivelling teachers' pets and tattletales we all despised in our forgotten classrooms filling the role of concerned mother for the generation of their parents and their grandparents, as well as civilization at large. People in their late 20s or early to mid-30s deciding that all is offence, and nothing is anything but what they decide that it is. God forbid someone actually enjoy something without analysing it to death and beyond and promptly denouncing it. As most people probably are aware of, Subtlety is not the first thing on one's mind when one is in the hormonally induced drunken rampage of horrid puberty. Quite the contrary. Just about everything is up front and centre, and the more overt the rebellion, the better, as it very well should be. Then it blows over, and it settles, and one is rounded, more secure in oneself and gaining traction on the path towards adulthood, having blown off quite a bit of steam in the process. If one allows oneself to grow up and become an adult human being, capable of accepting that someone else has the right to voice their opinion, however much it differs from one's own, or even offends, that is. As this happens, and one starts talking to oneself and thinking for oneself, acting for oneself and being oneself, there is a striking realization that it is all so beautiful, so beautiful. So what's your hurry? What's your hurry indeed? Why hurry towards some ever-changing goalpost, some new-fangled outrage that is always eluding your limited grasp? It is simply not worth the fucking bother unless it very directly, through laws, regulations and infringements, impacts oneself. Such as state-sanctioned mass media frenzied infringements upon freedom of speech, freedom of expression and freedom of association, which is slowly yet surely happening throughout the Western world. Call me paranoid as much as you wish, it is happening. And no labels of paranoid schizophrenia and assorted clinical insanity will change that. There's no need to worry too much about what other people think or do or find funny or enjoy. It is just annoying to everyone, including you yourself. Why should this bother you? How does someone laughing at a joke you find offensive in any way, shape or form hurt you? You are not the parent or guardian of the entirety of Western civilization. As such, Western civilization does not need to bow down and succumb to your will for censorship of anything you consider unfit for human consumption, be those differing opinions or culture or art or music or whatever. As this might have eluded your finite cognitive functions, allow me to dumb it down for you. You are not a worrying mother for a civilization that is a dumb and rebellious teenager needing to have its curfew in place and its consumption of culture curtailed to that which you deem appropriate. There are more than enough overbearing mothers around. Everyone and their moms would do well to loosen their reins and let other people be as other people are. Western civilization do not need an overbearing, smothering mother bearing down on them with all the protection and nurturing of a broken bottle of opiate-laced Jack Daniels, telling us that if we are not in our beds at this hour, if we do not turn off that devil music, if we don't cut our hair, then father will be pacing the floor with worry and mother won't be sleeping either, and you have ruined the stability of the family and will be the downfall of us all. Expecting only opinions you agree with to be allowed in the public sphere, and YouTube as well as other social media juggernauts are public spheres, no matter what you say, whilst at the same time pretending to hold liberal values is hypocritical, unthinking nonsense born from an egotistical notion that the world would be far better if only everyone agreed with you, and buckled down and did as you do, speak as you speak, think as you think, believe as you believe, and so forth and so on. A multitude of differing ideas, opinions and thoughts will always fare better than a forced, overarching and governing idea proposed by ideology and enforced with an iron fist. A tyrannical notion of inclusivity and equality where all are equal under the sun, despite the sun being eclipsed by the moon and the nonsense trembling in your verruca warts travelling all the way to your flimsy attack womb to give birth to the Antichrist, who says that in order for all to be free and to be equal, some must be unfree to speak and considered unequal in opinion, so that others shall feel safe from some imagined ill conjured forth in the elitist brains of piss-drunk armchair politicians, with a graduate degree in gender studies and another graduate degree in guerrilla warfare and propaganda of the Bolshevik Revolution. Because words, as opposed to actual political violence from the likes of goddamned Antifa, are violence for some strange and peculiar reason. If the ones committing violence with the spoken word does not toe the party line of the fair and fragile few, that is. And now, for this fractured notion of equality and inclusion which is defiling and assaulting our liberties. And that is liberties to offend, as well as to be offended. I have to sit here and rant and rave and ramble endlessly about this nonsense instead of settling down someplace and listen to the fireplace roar. There are lots of other things that interest me, you see. I don't have to write about this treachery. There are lots of things that I would enjoy writing about that is not infringements or attempted infringements upon my freedom to express myself. This seems to me to be the most pressing, however, the most important topic of discussion in our day and age, where we will either stumble into a censorious dark age of technocratic tyranny and globalist nonsense, or through fantastic perseverance and grit, fight our way into a new renaissance where we value and welcome all manners of speech, expression, art and culture, and let them die or succeed on their merit, instead of being so scared and timid of disagreements that we much prefer to censor that which is not in line with the current cultural zeitgeist, so that we don't need to see it coexist with our brave new world. Out of sight, out of mind. If we do not see it, it does not exist. If we redefine a word, it changes everything. Imagine the fantastic utopia. A world in which homelessness and poverty and violence does not exist because the words do not exist, or the words are redefined and everything is swept under a rug so that we do not see it. And when we do not see it, it cannot be there, now can it? There are no suicides in this utopia, in this frantically sterile world. Death by self-inflicted gunshot wounds are deemed a curious accident. Overdose on pills are just the same. A curious accident. For our utopia is so fantastic and so glorious and so equal and so inclusive that one cannot possibly wish to kill oneself, etc., etc. We can't have nice things like free expression of ideas and art and culture, because some raging and demented and ragingly demented social justice warrior or frazzled soccer mom with feminist platitudes tattooed on the inside of her eyelids, who does not think and does not speak for being too busy screeching, snivelling and roaring at the top of their lungs, will want to remove everything not fitting in with their narrow view of how things should be. And everyone is all up in arms at the horrors these people have to witness. Someone actually not agreeing, wearing symbols they do not like, listening to music they do not enjoy, saying something that offends them, laughing at jokes they do not laugh at. For some weird reason, people listen to this abhorrent censorious madness and lunacy. The lunatics have taken over the asylum, and the voices on the wind repeat the mantra and the slogan of the offended and insane. Ban it. Ban it. Condemn it all to the deepest and dankest pits of hell. Can't have anything disrupting whatever remains of balance and calm in these choke point minds of theirs, now can we? And so, really, I'd better scurry. I had better get out of here before it gets even worse. But where should I run to and how? There is no place to run. The walls are closing in. No room to roam no more. There's nothing to do but fortify this apartment even more. Write some more nonsense that I get displeased with, only to hear my wife say that it is beautiful, please don't hurry, or despair. And so I will try and relax, and I'll have maybe just half a drink more, and I'll ask my wife to put some records on while I pour, so that we, at the very least, can have a good time as the world burns around us. So that maybe we can sit down and laugh at this atrocious absurdity unfolding before our very eyes, instead of having to worry about what the neighbors might think. Because baby, it's bad out there, and it is getting worse, and it is getting even more bad, and I'm absolutely certain that the neighbors are spying on us, prepared at any moment to report us to the Stasi or whatever it is that keeps a track on us nowadays. And they'll bust down our door, noses wrinkled in disgust, proclaiming loudly, "Say, what's in this drink?" Then proceed to pour enough LSD in it to kill an elephant in order to frame me for something, so that they can remove me from the premises for something that is not merely protesting the status quo and the frail and frantic feminist takeover of the government and the minds of the younger generation, as well as our steady decline into petty tyranny and tin box dictatorship. Honk. Fucking goddamned honk. At the very least, they'll give me a free car ride, as there are no cabs to be had out there anymore since all the roads got paved with nails in order to force us to walk instead of drive, and I wish I knew how to end this absurdity without slipping into complete and utter madness, but I don't know how, and oh my, your eyes are like starlight now. It must be the LSD that Stasi slipped into my drink previously. And it is so terrorizing that in order to break this spell I will count the ways you wronged me, and then I'll take your hat, Mrs. Stasis, madam. My, your hair looks swell. We attempted to interview the subject, a Mr. Moiré Algier, on the morning of July 3rd, 2019. He appeared to be under the influence of some psychoactive drug or other, though that was hard to say with any level of certainty. Later examination uncovered that he had been drinking wine laced with LSD, a rather powerful psychedelic drug. As per regulations in situations such as these, we offered him Kool-Aid in an attempt to sober him up so that he would be capable of answering our inquiries as to his activities since November of 2018. This had little effect, as he threw every glass we offered him at the wall, mumbling under his breath that I ought to say no, no, no. When asked why he did not accept this generous offer of Kool-Aid, he attempted to stare us down with his beard. He then proceeded to manspread like a true patriarchal oppressor, with little regard to the emotional well-being of anyone present. This resulted in us having to bring in a new inquisitor, as, name redacted, broke down in fits of crying and literal shaking at this strange display of male dominance. We changed tactics and went for the tried and true approach of unlimited kindness and inclusivity. Not an easy tactic, of course, given the severity of the subject and his mansplained manspreading. Mind if I move in closer? Inquisitor C inquired, in an effort to end the subject's obviously militant strategy of manspreaded beard staring. The subject did not reply. At this point, we were all at our wits' end, I will have to admit, and we left the interrogation room to discuss our strategies further, as none of us inquisitors would like to admit to failure, in particular when faced with a fiend such as this. Poor sinner, he does not know any better, Inquisitor A stated. At least I'm gonna say that I tried. After all, what's the sense in hurting my pride? After letting the subject stew in our kindness and inclusivity cell for a few hours, all inquisitors present, with the approval of the Grand Inquisitor, felt that the time was right to carry on with our interrogation. Upon opening the door, however, the first thing that met us was the bare naked form of the subject. A sight, I will have to admit, that made me go temporarily blind. Of course, the temperature in the cell was slightly higher than average, somewhere in the vicinity of 50 degrees centigrade. We conceded, however, that this should not pose too many problems. As an obvious result of this, his nudity was considered to be highly offensive. This resulted in us charging him with sexual assault and battery as well. I really can't stay, the subject said in a hoarse whisper. He then proceeded to ask for water, which Inquisitor B was reluctant to deliver, fearing some kind of water-based assault. When told of our reluctance to deliver water, the subject simply stated, "Baby, don't hold out," and asked yet again to be let out, as the subject seemed incapable of acknowledging the true nature of his crimes. That is, intent to disrupting the peace, intent to spread misinformation, spreading misinformation, crimes upon good taste and decency, using the C word more than once, assault upon art, manspreading, beard staring, mansplaining, man-interrupting, man-slamming, non-feminist activities, as well as crime of thought, holding controversial opinions, sexual assault and battery, as well as general crimes of a testicular nature and counter-revolutionary activities. We were understandably very reluctant to unleash him upon the general public, well aware of the heinous acts he has been carrying out for almost a year. Despite it being summer, we felt that the best approach was to convince the subject that it was in fact winter, which, all things of course being subjective and objective fact no longer existing as anything but a remnant of patriarchal and white supremacist power structures, really cannot be considered lies, fibs, or anything of that nature. Said Inquisitor A, "Ah, but it's cold outside," said the subject. "I've got to get home. My wife must be worried sick." Said Inquisitor C, "Oh baby, you'll freeze out there." Said the subject, "Say, lend me your coat. That should help me with the cold." Said Inquisitor A. "It's up to your knees out there. It's all to do with climate change, you see." Said the subject, "You know, you've been really grand, and I thrill when you touch my hand." The touching of the hand was a result of Inquisitor B attempting friendliness and comfort during the obvious inner turmoil of the subject in question. A tactic that was well planned out, had it not been for us not factoring in the subject proceeding to man-bite the hand that comforted him, before man-slamming his way to the door which none of us Inquisitors had thought to close or lock, considering the passive nature of the subject after being left to calm down and relax in the kindness and inclusivity cell. A tactic which have always worked before. Upon which biting, Inquisitor B let out a scream, and in a strong and powerful and independent whimper stated, "Why don't you see that we are in the right? How can you do this thing to me? That really hurt." In inclusion to the aforementioned charges, the subject is now also charged with general assault and battery of a patriarchal nature. After manhandling his way to the door, the subject paused for a brief moment, his horrible man-naked man-form outlined against the bright light of the hall outside, his man-penis swinging gently below his filthy man-beard like an improvised man-club. He gazed at us with his terrifying male gaze and said in his man-voice these words, "There's bound to be talk tomorrow. Think of my lifelong sorrow. I have to deal with bastards like you all the time. At least there would be plenty implied if you caught pneumonia and died, you wretched Puritans. But now, I'm afraid to say, I really can't stay. You should get over that holdout, you imbecilic purveyors of nonsense." The subject then man-shook his man-beard in our general direction, turned around, and promptly bolted out the nearest window. As one would expect, we were all frozen in pure terror and fright at this horrible display of toxic masculinity, and as such were completely unable to calm down the situation and restore order. The subject is now on the loose, considered armed and dangerous. He must be approached with caution, wanted dead or alive. But it is cold outside. A nuclear winter is looming on the horizon. A dreaded future in which all is sterile and complacent and apathetic. A future in which opinions and even facts that go against the narrative is verboten, unfit for mass consumption for the perceived threat it poses against the delicate sensibilities of those who consider subjective feeling more important than fact, who consider facts and truth, reason and logic to be lies and slander or discriminatory statements, despite being none of these. We are going down the drain, flushed down and forgotten, or trampled underfoot by the furious forces of basement-dwelling nincompoops, pushing for a violent chaos for reasons they cannot properly explain. A generation lacking in empathy for anyone who does not share their limited and, to be honest, extreme point of view. For lack of reason, for lack of arguments, for lack of thought and conduct and empathy, they choose to beat up, beat down, rough up and pound anyone who disagrees to within an inch of their lives. Politically motivated violence from people too frail and weak and fragile and cowardly to consider the point of view of someone else. High on their own power, their own force in numbers, they become a mob. A buzzing, glaring, stupid, mad, insane, rage-fueled hive of violence and contempt, claiming violence of words to justify their violent actions. And in their minds, it makes perfect sense. In reaching the conclusion, dumb as it very well is, that words are violence, violence is then justified in order to stop violence. In considering words that they themselves have deemed to be hate speech to be an act of violence, they have every right in the world to face violence with violence. To their fragile minds, caught in the intersection of indoctrination, brainwashing and cultish thinking, they are partaking in self-defense. Even when not directly attacked, and even when, by all metrics, being in the wrong, Antifa and their ilk truly believe that they are in the right. These people are lost within a role-playing game, LARPing as revolutionaries, believing that they are bringing down the establishment, that they are fighting the rising tide of fascism. By implementing tactics used by fascists, the strong will survive, the weak will suffer, And the strong is the mass, the mob, the pack, the collective, hiding the individual behind a mutually assured strength in black-walled numbers, horrifying in their madness and violence against those whom they consider to be the truly violent ones. These people are lost in their own demented belief in their moral superiority. I would be inclined to pity them profusely, were it not for the fact that they hurt people immensely and with impunity. Were it not for the fact that they seem immune to anything not covered by their hugbox echo chambers, their backwards nonsense, their bored and pointless lives in which they seek so desperately some meaning, something to do, something to break the monotony and drudgery of their easy existence, that they rave and roar and rampage and ridicule, that they bash and beat and break bones and skulls to gain some semblance of action, of meaning, of being part of something bigger than their pathetic weasel existence. As it stands, I cannot pity them, nor can I hate them. I consider them a poignant tragedy, a symbol of a society sliding into pointless decadence and hedonism, into overabundant debauchery and degeneracy, a society in which living is remarkably easy, a society in which they have it so good that they feel sorry for themselves, and feel guilty for others not having it as good as they do. Lost within a society in which there is nothing to strive for, nothing to conquer, nothing to occupy the days with, nothing that gives any sense of meaning or belonging, prompting the bored beast within to go on a rampage, to complain and to bitch and to moan about non-issues just to break the pale and grey and dull monotony of every day, slipping into the next day with no meaning, no point, no search, no quest, no nothing. There is no unifying idea, tradition or ideal, just the endless fight. Preposterous, petulant, prepubescent postgraduate children hidden in the bodies of adults, bored senseless and prone to believing anything as long as there is some action, some feeling, something, whatever. Oh baby, it's cold outside. And it will keep getting colder as long as this tide is not halted, as long as this tide is allowed to run free, backed by mass media pundits just as pampered and decadent and dull and bored and meaningless as they themselves are. As long as this nonsensical violent beast is given free rein, is given protection and explanation and all manner of mental gymnastics to justify their abhorrent behavior, their killing of opposing views, their culling of inquisitive minds who do not swallow their dogma hook, line and stinker, we will see more violence, more chaos, a steady escalation of beatdowns and debauchery until someone is killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, prompting ever more escalation. And these people preach tolerance. It sickens me. Tolerance. 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 How that word has lost all meaning. How that word has eluded the grasp of mental midgets, incapable of considering views from anything but their own coke-addled minds and echo chambers. How that word, tolerance, has escaped the dictionary and floated into the midst of bullies, using it as nothing but an excuse for violence against those considered to not be tolerant or tolerated, using it as a sword or bite clock or bludgeon of righteousness, when they are incapable of understanding that tolerance is a two-way street. In preaching tolerance, one must also be tolerant, and being tolerant is tolerating that other people hold views different from one's own, and that this is quite okay in a society that is not in the grip of some totalitarian tyranny. Violently assaulting people for holding different opinions is not tolerant. It is quite the opposite. It is the hallmark of tyrants, the banner of obscene and horrible tyranny, which we are sliding into gently to mass applause, which we are drifting into lovingly to cheers and celebrations, which we embrace as though the worst crime in existence is someone having their feelings hurt and being offended for seeing or hearing that someone disagrees, for believing lack of tolerance in other people whom they beat to a bloody pulp for their lack of tolerance of opposing views spoken or written. Oh baby, it's cold outside. The freedom of the West is dying. Long live the freedom of the West. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ramble as well as my other ramblings. Please consider sharing, liking, subscribing and all that jazz. That would help the message, such as it is, be manspread far and wide. Take a look at the links down below as well, if you please. Catch you next time.